Rainbow Six Quarantine is an upcoming 3-player tactical co-op FPS game that is being developed by Ubisoft Montreal and published by Ubisoft. Initially, the game was set to be released in 2020, but the title was pushed back into 2021. I've also heard that there is potentially playtesting happening for the game in November, and the game could launch simultaneously on next-generation consoles. So let's break down all the current information for Rainbow Six Quarantine going into 2021. This video is a follow-up to my original video on the topic earlier in the year, so I will link that down below if you want to check that out. All the other sources, as always, will be linked in the description as well. And with that out of the way, let's get into Rainbow Six Quarantine delays and news. Let's start with the delays for the project. The original release date for the title was 2020 until it was announced by the Ubisoft CEO during an earnings call that 3 of the company's titles were being delayed, and one of those titles was Rainbow Six Quarantine. The delay was minor and shifted the game from sometime in 2020 to sometime before the end of the fiscal year, and if you aren't familiar with fiscal years for companies, they end on March 31st, so at the time it was at most a 3-month delay. And most fans understood that they didn't want the studio to rush the title, considering how many fans were excited for this kind of new title from Ubisoft. Then in September of this year, fans thought the game would still be released after an Australian retailer, Guerrilla Gaming, had a listing for Rainbow Six Quarantine with a release date of the 18th of December. And this fit with the time frame after the delay that we knew, so a lot of fans thought that we could see the game still in the holiday season and sometime in 2020. And it would also still fit in the current fiscal year, and it would still make sense that the game could release on the PS4 and Xbox One without being too far into the next generation of consoles, because those are still, as of now, the only consoles that are confirmed. Unfortunately, that hope didn't last long, as Ubisoft announced in an earnings call following that leak that Far Cry 6 and Rainbow Six Quarantine were both being delayed due to COVID-19. The company states it was a bigger transition to work from home than they originally thought, and now the game will launch sometime in fiscal 2021, which means the game will now launch somewhere between April of 2020 to March 2021, which is a big time frame and could potentially be delayed even longer than a year at the time of recording. I did talk about it in my original video that Ubisoft was discussing either pushing back Phoenix Rising or Rainbow Six Quarantine, and now we know which game was pushed back, and it was unfortunately Quarantine. And the delay itself still isn't too surprising. We have very few details about the game, and we still haven't seen any real gameplay, all of which should be red flags as we're following this game and something that's supposed to come out even still within a year, and we've seen nothing about it. One thing I want to touch on is that the leaked Ubisoft sci-fi game trailer that has circulated around the internet is actually now referenced as the original idea for Rainbow Six Quarantine. PC Gamer interviewed Alex Hutchinson, who was the game director on the Pioneer Project, which is what the game was called, and the project was defined as a player-driven, zero-gravity exploration non-violent game. And eventually they go on to say the game was reconfigured into the tactical shooter Rainbow Six Quarantine. It is strange because the two games seem like they have nothing in common besides, I guess, a little bit of the color palette and potentially some of the gameplay and world design, so we'll just have to see if we can really tell once we get into the game. It's a really short story, and that's all I wanted to say about it, and it's something that's come up since my original video. The next story is a rumor that has been circulating relatively recently and is in regards to the playtesting of Rainbow Six Quarantine. I know a lot of jokes are made about Ubisoft not playtesting their games due to some of the quality issues that are apparent when their games launch. But contrary to popular belief, Ubisoft does playtest their games and are surprisingly open about the process. They have many accounts and studios that are involved in the playtesting process. And if you don't know what playtests are, Ubisoft directly says that they are players who test games that are in development before anyone else. So it's different from a beta where a lot of those are open, or even closed beta where it's a lot of times for pre-orders. Playtesting you sign up for and a lot of times can get compensated in one way or another to test games that are in development and to give feedback. So it's kind of a form of QA testing, so checking the quality and seeing what players say about the project. This past September, Ubisoft Montreal announced that remote playtests would be available for everyone, that anyone could sign up and play these games. And it has been rumored that 2 rounds of playtesting took place in November, and both of those were for Rainbow Six Quarantine. I've heard some rumors take it a step further that other Ubisoft studios are helping with the final stages of development and playtesting, including Red Storm, all of which is very hard to prove. I've had some members of the community reach out showing that they were asked if they would do playtesting, but it never included the game. It was just asking if they wanted to do playtesting before they signed an NDA, and of course, after they sign it, they can't talk about it anymore. So there's all these rumors circulating, and we know they're doing playtesting because a lot of that is public. Ubisoft Montreal is always doing playtesting, sometimes 2 or 3 a month, and they show off the playtesters on a lot of their public accounts. The only thing that isn't public is what games they are playing. So it is possible that Rainbow Six Quarantine is the game that's being playtested, and I would say even likely, considering the game is going to be coming out soon. So it's not impossible, it's just one of those rumors that's really hard to disprove or prove completely unless Ubisoft themselves said it or someone breaks their NDA. Now, I'm hoping that they are doing some of this playtesting late this year, which could lead to them launching the beta that Ubisoft promised before release. I mentioned this in my last video. If you go to their website, they do ask people to sign up for a beta, and I'm hoping that this is what a lot of the playtesting will lead to, that we can eventually get this beta early next year, and the game will either launch late next year or early 2022. So what should we expect in 2021 and beyond? Most community members and myself are hoping these delays will give the team extra development time to launch the project on the new current generation of consoles. It would be somewhat strange for Ubisoft to launch a Rainbow Six game in 2021 without it being on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, and I'm hoping that they will have this completed by the time they're ready to show off more of the game in 2021. The only part that kind of makes this more complicated is it's weird that Ubisoft never mentions the title anymore. A post on the Ubisoft website in October gave a list of games fans can expect on the next generation of consoles, and Rainbow Six Siege was mentioned, but no Quarantine. And it's not just because Quarantine is an upcoming game, because they mentioned Far Cry 6 as well, so they are picking and choosing a mix of current games and games that are still not released yet. So it's weird that they completely ignore Rainbow Six Quarantine, or if we're just supposed to assume that Rainbow Six Quarantine is lumped in with Rainbow Six Siege and we can expect them all on the next generation of consoles. So I'm not really sure what's happening behind the scenes, if we could see some sort of development shift like what happened with Gods and Monsters to Phoenix Rising, or if we're just all making the situation bigger than what it needs to be, everything is progressing fine, and COVID just pushed the game back further. The one nice part is even with this delay, we will see the game hopefully within the next year, so we don't have too much longer to wait to see what's happening. So that's where I'm going to end this video. Make sure to like and share, subscribe for weekly gaming news, and I will see you guys in the next one.